Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this public forum, an opportunity for members of our community to address councillors. I understand that not everyone can hear. Can you hear up the back? Not so well. Okay. Just wait and make some adjustments before we commence. What about that? We're going to lift the roof off? No, not yet. Yeah. Better? Okay, great. Thanks, Nathan. So welcome to this public forum, an opportunity for members of our community to address the council, or councillors. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and we pay respects to elders past, present and emerging. Invite the General Manager now to make a statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This meeting is being audio and video recorded, and the recording will be made available on the internet. No other persons are permitted to record the meeting unless specifically authorised by council to do so. In relation to Have Your Say, all speakers are requested to ensure their comments are relevant to the particular agenda item. The chairperson may withdraw the privilege to speak where a speaker makes personal remarks or criticisms or uses abusive or inappropriate language. Speakers do not enjoy any special protection arising from comments made during this forum and should therefore refrain from making defamatory remarks or personal defamatory statements against any individual. And can we ask that all mobile phones and computers be set to silent, please? Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Mr. General Manager. Under the Code of Meeting Practice, today we have 7 speakers that will address the councillors. Under this Code of Meeting Practice, we have the ability to have 2 speakers against, 2 speakers for each item. And on today's in today's meeting, we have 2 against item 11.1 and 1 for, and we have 2 against item 12.1 and 2 for that item. The other thing that I'll make mention of is that during the meeting, if the gallery becomes a little noisy, I'll ask you to refrain from making noise, and in the event that you can't stop yourself making noise, then we'll ask you to be removed either by yourself, or we'll get someone to help you to leave the chamber. So we'd like to have it as ruly as possible. So according to our agenda that was released today, and you may be wondering why I'm sitting here and not the Mayor. The Mayor is remote today. He'll be joining the meeting a little later. So I am chairing this public forum as well as the extraordinary council meeting at 4 p.m. So I'd like to invite Billy Wood, who's speaking against item 11.1, the New England Rail Trail. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone.
Can you just press your... Thanks, Billy.
Yeah, right to go. Firstly, I'd just like to thank councillors Brad Witters, Paul Packham, Dorothy Robertson, Susan McMichael and Deborah O'Brien for supporting the amended motion by Councillor Margaret O'Connor for further and better particulars of the New England Rail Trail at the last ordinary council meeting. It seems a vast majority of the general public were then and still are unaware that the council motion being voted on that night was not to proceed with the full rail trail project contained in the New England Rail Trail business case, but a smaller rail trail from Armidale, the original case being from Armidale to Ben Lomond, a 68.8 kilometre track in length, but a miniature rail trail, 9.8 kilometres in length, at a cost of $5.4 million derived from federal bushfire funding grant. It does not take much number crunching to calculate that the cost per kilometre for this mini rail trail project would be over $550,000 per kilometre, and that continue at that cost rate, the NERT project would require a further $32.5 million to complete the remaining 59 kilometres to Ben Lomond. I'd consider this to be recognised as a conservative cost, as the Armidale to Merrick section would have to be among the cheapest, being from Armidale city centre along some of the flattest and most easily accessible sections of the railway line. Surely, as work on the track reached more remote and in-hospital sections of the line, costs would surely increase. The councillors I've mentioned above displayed commendable public due diligence and financial prudence, requesting more information regarding the new mini rail trail project, as it would be morally irresponsible and financially reckless to attempt to retrofit, facsimilate and synthesise the 68.8 kilometre Armidale to Ben Lomond business case model onto this new 9.8 kilometre smaller rail trail. To make this obvious, within the first page of the NERT business case containing key proposal details, the full 68.8 kilometre trail was to be delivered at a cost of $21 million. This would represent a conservative cost blowout for the project of $16.9 million. If the figures for the build cost for this project are so incorrect, how could any further figures within this document be relied upon? It would seem that it would make this document invalid. It would appear without a guarantee of extraordinary funding grants or rate revenues or both, the NERT project may take decades to complete. There's a very real chance that the NERT project may not be completed before the reinstatement of railway services north of Armidale. What is the liability for Armidale Regional Council as lessee of the main north line to return the railway corridor in the same condition that they received it in? Without a comprehensive business case for the feasibility of the 9.8 kilometre Armidale to Dumeric Trail, we can ask, where would this rail trail stack up in comparison with rail trails elsewhere on mainland Australia? An easy Wikipedia listing of 99 rail trails within mainland Australia would place the Armidale Dumeric rail trail in the bottom three in terms of both length of the trail and geographical distance from a capital city, only behind the Carnarvon rail trail being 3 kilometres in length and 904 kilometres from Perth, and the Capricorn Coast rail trail being 4.5 kilometres in track length and 633 kilometres from Brisbane. This would place Armidale Dumeric rail trail in the bottom 3% concerning both track length and geographical isolation from a capital city. Incidentally, the 4.5 kilometre Capricorn Coast rail trail would have actually a lot more tourist potential going for it, as it was built on an abandoned branch line off the main Nambour to Cairns railway line, with the intention of traversing 53 kilometres of trail to connect with the city of Rockhampton, which is serviced by electric tilt train to Brisbane and diesel electric north to Cairns, allowing more tourist access both north and south along the main Queensland railway line. As a side note, stage one of the Capricorn rail trail, being 4.5 kilometres in length, was stated to be a 53 kilometre rail trail to Rockhampton, was open to the public amid much fanfare and local publicity on Australia Day 2014. One has to question why this tropical coastal trail has not yet progressed any further in 10 years. In summing up, I believe that item 9.1 represents the worst of both options for all parties concerned here tonight. It is a blockage to the line north to Queensland, and it's also not the true rail trail that was promised to the rail trail advocates in this room. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Do we have any questions for Mr. Wood? Councillor Gillespie. Billy, could you just turn your button off? Thank you.
I'm just a little bit wondering, this mini trail you're talking to, I thought we were talking about stage one of the rail trail. Is that what you're referring to as the mini trail? I want that cleared up before I ask.
We can call it stage one, John, but that doesn't guarantee it's going to be stage two, does it? Does it guarantee stage two?
Can you just put your speaker? Thank you.
We want to hear that again?
Oh, yeah, the people in the gallery were also wondering.
Yeah, the title of calling it stage one can be deceptive because there's no guarantee of stage two. None of us have got a crystal ball. Sure, the money could be spent at this stage on stage one, but just like the Capricorn Coast Rail Trail that I picked that out because it's quite similar to what is being proposed in 9.1, but it actually has let's be honest, it has a lot more going for it, a lot more tourist attraction, a lot more pull. It would have connected back to the main north line. It was a spur line off that line. this trail doesn't have many of the advantages that trail has, and it's been 10 years that has stalled. So that's a pretty good indicator that this project wasn't the big money maker that might have been slated as.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson, can you just turn yours off for a second? We'll just finish that question.
That was my first thing. So, just so I've got it seen it come through. What are your credentials in this field? Have you got some expertise in the tourism side and all the financial side and stuff like that? That'd be good if you could tell me that too, because I'm a bit in the dark about that.
Okay, we'll get into some personal details if you like, John. I'm very much like you. I'm sort of a jack of all trades, but no one could put a ticket on me as being a master of any. I have run a business up in Guyra for 17 odd years. I'm a small scale manufacturer. I have pretty good knowledge because my trade and my income and my livelihood depends on that highway. So that highway is the one thing that keeps me in business because I have that passing trade. Armidale as a city is heavily bypassed. The main thing is the main thoroughfare bypasses around Armidale. It is a big detour to get into Armidale for travellers. Further on what I do, the products that I make, it's quite curious for a lot of people who wonder what I do and how I do it and all these things. But essentially, what I have going for the products is that they're generally unique. I can produce them at a lower cost. They're accessible to a main thoroughfare, being the highway. So these are the things that can make or break a business. So with the rail trail, we're talking about something that at this stage one, and we'll only talk about really stage one here, that it's going to be something tucked away in Armidale. It's going to take a great deal of marketing and expense to promote this to people further afield. I'm lucky because I don't have to spend any money on marketing because I'm right on the highway. When people drive past, they see my business, and if they're interested, they'll make their way in maybe at some stage. So with this mini rail trail, it kind of it doesn't look like it has all like the elements that would usually make a successful business. It's not unique because there's 100 of these things across Australia. It's not easily, let's face it, it's not easily accessible. I have a lot of people that drop in that Guyra, they get their lunch and they get their coffee in Guyra because it's a 2-minute detour. It's not a 20-minute detour into Armidale to grab a coffee or grab something to eat or grab a sandwich. Armidale probably really is, the main competitor for Armidale in terms of passing trade is Tamworth, in the sense that people will probably be more likely to drive onto Tamworth than to swing into Armidale, and that's just the nature of things. But yeah.
Thank you very much. Councillor Robinson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just wondered if any of the staff members would like to comment on the blowout in the costings that was raised by Mr. Woods.
No. Okay, thanks, Councillor Robinson. Mindful that we've got another 6 speakers to get through in the next 45 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Wood. Doesn't appear there's any more lights on, so appreciate your time. And welcome Mr. Tierney to the lectern. And if you could just press your button on, please.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor and councillors. Council voted with good reason to pause the new proposal for a mini rail trail to Demarrick Railway Station and to ask for more supporting information. The reasons for that decision have not gone away. The Stage 1 mini rail trail idea was kept secret from councillors and public alike from November last year until last month. None of the 5 supporting documents provided as attachments to last month's item 9.1 knew anything about a Stage 1 mini rail trail. And attachments numbers 6 and 7 referred to in the report were not actually provided at all. The mini rail trail lacks any business case, but it needs one. There's no written advice from Public Works to do a mini rail trail Stage 1, even though the report at last meeting said that there was. More detail is required about recurrent costs, especially about weed control and about the foreshadowed external sources of recurrent funding. Turning to the big picture, Council is attempting a $30 million rail trail with only $5.4 million. There's no indication that the $23 million of grants applied for to complete the project are likely to be successful, and the requirement for $1.8 million co-contribution by Council is in defiance of a previous resolution that the project must be cost neutral. The proposal comes with a litany of missing and withheld information, and Council acted absolutely correctly in questioning it. But in the name of due diligence, there is more. There's new advice from the Minister for Regional Transport. Jenny Aitchison wrote to Trains North only 5 days ago on the 8th of May, and among other interesting observations, said this: Armidale Regional Council is yet to submit any evidence to the New South Wales Government to demonstrate compliance with the rail trail framework for its section between Armidale and Ben Lomond. Why is it that Armidale has submitted no evidence of compliance with the New South Wales Rail Trails framework for this apparently headline project? It's hard to understand, but there it is. We'll make copies of the Minister's letter available to all councillors before the meeting, and if you'd like, I'm happy to table the letter we wrote to the Minister to which she was replying. Permit me to bring a word of warning. Rail trails don't get approval just because there's a business case predicting success and some partial funding in the pipeline. Procedures must be followed before a rail trail regulation is made. The Minister has acknowledged that the petition we took to Parliament with over 10,700 signatures was a significant expression of public opinion, and we at Trains North intend to keep faith with the more than 7,000 signatories to that petition who are resident on the Northern Tablelands, to defend this railway line and to reaffirm that destroying it to make a bicycle path does not have demonstrated community support. That's just one of the 6 parts of the rail trail framework that must be satisfied. You can look into the other 5 and decide what you think. Reputational risk to Council has been mentioned if the BSBR grant that is in danger of expiring is surrendered. Council's reputation would in fact suffer more if it were to take this funding for a project which ultimately does not proceed, partly for want of money and partly for want of support within Council's own constituency and partly for other reasons. The depreciation burden in Council's accounts that would arise from this grant would be significant, and it should only be taken on if the investment is clearly worth it. A unifying project like a cycle trail to Dumaric Dam or to Blue Hole, or a similar project in Gyra, or a mountain bike course would likely be more certain as a worthy investment. So whichever side of the big picture rail project you're on, councillors, I just ask you today to vote to defend your prerogative to be properly informed and stand by your wise decision of the 24th of April to look further into these things.
Thank you, Mr. Tierney. Any questions for Mr. Tierney? Lovely, thank you very much. Now I'd like to invite Mr. Richard Post to speak for item 11.1.
Good afternoon, councillors. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak this afternoon. So my name's Richard Post. I'm a local farmer in the Gyra community. My wife's family's been there for 6 generations. I've got 3 young kids, and I'm in favour unequivocally of item 11.1. I'm well qualified to speak on families, in particular from Guyra. I'm approaching my 8th year as president of the Guyra Show Society. That is the biggest family membership group in Guyra. My wife and I have given many years to the Guyra Central School P&C. I am its current P&C president. That is easily the biggest school in Guyra. My wife coaches multiple Guyra sports teams for the kids. She's on the committee of most clubs in Guyra, name it, particularly on the sporting side. We are members and can voluntarily contribute to pony club, polo cross, camp drafts, you name it, we're in the thick of it. People that know me know that I don't suffer fools. I get things done. I bring people together. I have a good head for business, and I listen to the community. And if anyone's been to a Show Society meeting, I don't speak much, I listen very well. I'm well qualified to speak on behalf of families, especially in Guyra. They are the quiet majority in my view. They are not here this afternoon, they're picking their kids up from school, they're running their small businesses, they're working until dark, they're doing the things that you do when you have a young family. There is real despair in recent weeks. This proposal creates a community asset that families enjoy. Beyond that, the despair on the shopkeepers in Guyra in recent weeks that I am very, very concerned about from a mental health point of view in light of this opportunity not proceeding. There is real frustration amongst families. They just want to see this get underway. Sure, I would love if it was all funded and would get built, because the benefits would flow more quickly. But I'm urging the crowd here today that the hardest thing is making a start. Guyra is okay with it being a short leg from Armidale towards Demerrick. It is a start. And any of the people that are in business, the hardest thing is making a change and making a start. That's what we'd love to see today. The merits are clear. I drive past the sign, unleash the opportunities. Guyra needs tourism. Our main street desperately needs it. The communities around it need it. Unleash the opportunity for Demerrick. Unleash the opportunity for Black Mountain. Unleash the opportunity for Llangollen and Ben Lomond. By proceeding today, we are opening up those opportunities. 15 years of inactivity is where we're at today. I'm urging us to take a step forward to connect our communities. Seize the opportunity. I remember pre-drought in 1819, there was a crowdfunding campaign which raised well over $40,000 from the pockets of the community. Could you get anything else that would galvanise the community more than putting their hand in their pocket to find out if it made sense or not? My 3 kids, I gave them the opportunity to contribute. They donated $1 and $2 of their pocket money towards that. Let's make it happen for the silent majority that may not be here today. That is my 3 children, the other families in Guyra and the generations to come. So in closing, I urge you to think of future generations, the opportunity this unlocks, and stay true to your motto, and let's unleash this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Post. Any questions for Mr. Post?
Yes.
Thank you,
Rich, I know we've already spoken today and you've heard my thoughts, but it would be remiss of me not to ask you the same question I asked everyone else at the last meeting. This track, as we spoke about earlier, needs to be looked in isolation on, not stage 1 or whatever it's being put out as now, as a business proposal. And you talked of opportunities, and I spoke to you about, I believe, what swayed me was the opportunities on a full line. You know that, you know where I stand on that. The community needs to know what opportunities are shovel ready, ready to go for a 9-kilometre piece of track. Like I asked the same questions of the speakers at the last meeting. Do you know, or can you provide any information on how this 9-kilometre piece of rail trail, whether it's stage 1, whether it's the only stage, whether it's for 5 years, 10 years before another stage comes in, what types of businesses, what types of tourists are going to either come to Armidale, Gyra, Ben Lomond. Really, with the funding, where the funding's come from, should be going to places like Ebor and our long lost friend Atinga. So if you can give me some sort of positive on, because that's what I'm looking for, right?
Jump at the chance. I went to New Zealand for the sole purpose to ride the Otago Rail Trail. I didn't even own a bike, nor did my wife. It is a very similar climate and aesthetically pretty place as the New England. The whole time I was thinking, how can we not have this opportunity in our own backyard? We flew to New Zealand for it, and we're not even cyclists. And we were overwhelmed by the transformation. So this is my first-hand experience to you. We stayed in the equivalents of the Ben Lomond train station overnight. Farmers would come and cook us meals for our $10 a head and $2 a beer honesty policy. Hearing them firsthand how it's changed their communities was overwhelming. I'll never forget, there's a stop called Wedderburn. And just out of interest, has anyone in the room done the Otago Rail Trail? There is a stop called Wedderburn, which is an early settlement with a big super shed, not unlike the one that's in Gyra. There is a video playing of a farmer pre the implementation of the rail trail, which would have been taken in 1991 when that rail line closed through to Clyde. He was listing all the things that would go wrong with the rail trail, and he reminds me quite a lot, and the room will laugh knowing this fella, of my father-in-law at the Fred Bell. He named everything that would go wrong. The people will steal my stock, there will be weeds, there will be theft, there will be trespassers, and no one will even use it. Fast forward, the same farmer, after 20 years, now that the local school has reopened and one of his kids has come back to the city as a teacher. There's 2 cafes in town. There was 0 prior. One of his kids has come back from the city to run the cafe. Here is a first-hand example of one of the biggest opponents going full 360 and swallowing his pride and vouching firsthand about the benefits to his community, because he's had 2 young children return to the area. There was only room for one of the 3 on the farm. His community has been totally re-established in a generation from what he knew it as growing up in the 50s. It was the most powerful, pivotal point, Brad, in my understanding of how these rail trails work. And then it just kept happening every night subsequent in all these other little villages, which are exactly like Ben Lomond's, Black Mountains, and remnants like Demerick. So in my first-hand experience, many of the farmers asked us back to come and have a stay in, because they were so powerfully turned by the economics of the rail trail. The fellow I mentioned who went 360, his wife had 10 accommodation cabins along the rail trail. And this is the fellow that thought all his stock would be stolen. So that is a first-hand experience that I got myself from probably 10, 20, 30 first-hand experiences of farmers where they have seen regrowth in populations. It's all the stats are there plain to see, and they are unequivocal and unquestionable. And that, I think, it's high country, early pastoral settlement, beautiful vistas, mountainous, sound familiar? And it doesn't have it's a country of a population a fraction of ours. So we are sitting midway between 2 major centres. And I'll give you another anecdote. A month ago, there was hundreds of kids here for a rugby carnival. There was hundreds of parents here for a rugby carnival. I didn't have any kids involved. I just volunteered to help on the barbecue. They were all staying in town. It was the first weekend of school holidays, and they all went down the coast. But when I mentioned to them if we had a rail trail and would they stay for a week, they all said that would be a wonderful thing to do with all of my kids here today and keep all these football teams in Armidale and the region for another week. If we build the first stage, we might have got them for a night or 2, and what a start. Build the first stage, let the traffic determine whether it's a success or not.
Mr. Post, I just have to stop you there because we've normally got about a 2-minute time there. Councillor Witters, if you can.
Yeah, you mentioned some really good things that I agree with for a full long trail, and having travelled to Ben Lomond the week after the last council meeting and saw the B&B right next to the railway line. I think it's beautiful. That's a good spot, and the train station and all that sort of stuff. And everyone that mentions or has mentioned the Otago line, it's brilliant. That's exactly what we were promised a rail trail would bring. But that's not what we're voting on. That's not what we're looking at. We're not looking at something like that. We're looking at a 9-kilometre piece of trail, and I'm looking for something concrete from the speakers. So, and the next speakers to get up and speak for it is what is going to keep what part of that 9 kilometres? Because we, as I think it was Mr. Wood might have spoke earlier, we don't know where the funding is coming again for the rest for stage 2, stage 3, or whatever. So we need to look at stage 1. So supposed to get back to you, because I don't want to get into a debate, so I have to make it a question. Just that 9-kilometre, as a parent who was at that rugby union carnival, if you wanted to ride 9 kilometres on a bike with your kids, what on being able to veer off to the side or along there between here and Jemeric, what things would you say, hey kids, let's ride this 9 kilometres and we can do X, Y, Z? What sort of things should be there that aren't there or are coming that would make you, as a person who speaks for parents and speaks with young kids, pull up? Because that's what we need to look for, is stuff like that, because otherwise, what's the other incentives?
I would have encouraged a lot of families to stay an extra night in Armidale because it was there. It's not, so I didn't.
To do what? To do what though?
To spend another day to ride out and back, to give them a taste of what it could be. I'll give you another example. A family that usually comes up and quite often has stayed with us, 4 kids, rugby nuts. They've done it enough. They actually went to the Otago Rail Trail, would you believe? Without any prompting from me, they said, we've done Armidale a few times. And I said, gee, it'd be great if we had one. They said, well, you've been talking about it for years. They went for 2 weeks instead of coming to the Tas Rugby Carnival on a family holiday to do the Otago Rail Trail. So to your point, Brad, whilst you need to know black and white, I understand that. The flip side is you need a vision and you need to walk towards it. If they fully costed the cost of the Sydney Harbour Bridge, it would never have been built. You need a vision beyond what is in front of you. And if it is a step in the right direction, I will back council to see it through.
Thanks, Mr. Post. And thank you, Councillor Witters. I have the next speaker is Mr. Siri Gamage. Is he, Siri, hi. Speaking against item 12.1.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon, councillors. I'm a retired academic from the University of New England. Have some experience in supervising students working on policy matters. And for the last 34 years, I have been living in Armidale, but this is the first time I get an opportunity to address the council. So it is a first for me. So I'm speaking about item 12.1, but looking at the motion presented by Councillor Robinson, the basis of her motion seems to be point 1, where she says that information regarding the prospects of reopening the rail line north of Armidale and the level of subsidy required. She says that the Armidale line to the south is reported to be the second most subsidized line in New South Wales. This is from the information from the council LSP. Fares cover only 17% of operating costs. So it seems unlikely that the government will reopen the line in the near future. So this is the whole basis of her motion, which follows later on. But the Minister for Regional Transport says that Transport for New South Wales is to prepare a strategic integrated regional development plan later this year to assess the transport needs, modes and priorities. And the Transport New South Wales says no decision has been made about the future use of rail line. And in terms of the numbers, I got some official data about Sydney to Armidale and Armidale to Sydney train service. And January, February, March, April this year figures, monthly figures, January 2630, February 2293, March 2802, April 3262. These numbers are only lower compared to Sydney to Melbourne numbers, Sydney to Dubbo numbers, Sydney to Canberra numbers, Grafton to Sydney numbers, and Brisbane to Sydney numbers. So this idea that this rail service between Armidale and Sydney is non-viable, or it is only 17% of the people are paying for their tickets, I don't know where that numbers come from. So it has to be looked at with some bit of a grain of salt. And the second point, then of course the motion goes, the council agrees to the timetable outlined in the New South Wales Public Works NERD project program, including design community consultation. The timetable is not included in the motion. So therefore I had to spend a lot of time this morning reading through all those hundreds of pages of the desktop review. And then of course I found deed execution, early August 2024. Complete master plan, end of November 2024. Complete design, early April 2024, and so on. Complete construction and project handover, mid-July 2026. So the motion asks the council to agree to this timetable, allowing the construction of the NERD from Armidale to station to Dumarex Plus, delivering the remainder subject to obtaining 100% of grant. So basically, I mean, I have a problem about what section this timetable applies to. As my colleague Matthew said before, does it apply to this mini section or the longer section? Has the National Emergency Management Agency approved the variation of funding? It is not clear from the email received or the other information provided. Is there a funding agreement between funding agency and the council? Has the council provided a copy of that to the councillors, at least to have a look at? What is the deadline before which the council has to accept the 5.4 million grant? So these are some questions. And maintenance cost alone, in my calculation, looking at the Northern Rivers Rail Trails, they mentioned 200,000 per annum to Itchaya and Richmond Valley Rail Trails. So if we apply that, it will cost $6 million for this council over the period of 30 years. But the figure given by Public Works is half that. So in a sense, I mean, this motion, I don't have enough time to go through, but it has to be looked at very carefully, and also the effort of the council at least to spend 1.6 million of the grant for preliminary work without obtaining the minister's approval, probably it is a very risky thing. And finally about Otago, my friend Matthew visited Otago early in January. He tells me that all the tourist attractions there were already there by the time they built the rail trail. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gummidge. Do we have any questions, Councillor Galletley and Mr. Gummidge? Could you just press the button off, Councillor Galletley?
Just saying, you're so good with all this, Siri. I'm just wondering, what sort of numbers of people getting off at the train here in Armidale travel north up to there? Can you give me an assessment on how many numbers actually travel up through there? That'd be good, thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Councillor O'Connor.
I'd like to make a point of order. Dr. Gummidge has not suggested that he's an expert on transport figures, and it's not really relevant to this, I don't think. But anyway.
So your question, Councillor Galletley, was the numbers from
Armidale up towards the border, whether it's to Glen Innes, how many get on a bus to head north from here? I'm just curious because he seems to be pretty good on the figures.
Dr. Gummidge, are you prepared to answer the question? Or?
I mean,
And you just press the button.
I looked at some data before, John, but the numbers variate. I mean, from Armidale, from Tenterfield to maybe about 2-3 people get on to the bus, and then of course all the way Deepport and so on. Glennon is another maybe 15 people get on, and roughly about 20. But my colleague who will speak next, Jason Russell, will be able to give you more information on that. But it is not an indication about the future use of the coach service or trains.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any further questions of Dr. Gamage? If not, thank you very much. And now I would like to invite Mr. Jason Russell speaking against item 12.1, New England Rail Trail. Thank you, Mr. Russell. Just press that button, turn the red light on. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen and councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak before you today. My name's Jason Russell. I'm the current president of New England Railway, which is a volunteer community organisation based here in Armidale. New England Railway Incorporated asks that councillors vote against this motion in respect to the NERT and any part of this motion that forms any works related to or may be required for the NERT. I also ask that you consider the impacts, the future operations of New England Railway, the residents of Armidale, north of Armidale itself, the population living north of Armidale, such as Glen Innes, Deepwater, Tenterfield. I can even go as far as the border towns of Jennings and Wallingarra, and even as far as Stanthorpe in Queensland. Whilst admittedly New England Railway sat idle for many years, a new board was elected in 2021, and since then we have set about with the plan to become operational. One of our rail motor sets is undergoing restoration, and we are in negotiation with a rolling stock maintainer to complete the mechanical work required. In addition, we have applied to update our accreditation to be able to work on track within our yard in Armidale and to move rolling stock. We are currently awaiting a decision by UGL Regional Links and Armidale Council on whether they support this change. The Office of National Rail Safety Regulator is impressed by the work we have done to get this to this stage and can't see any issues subject to the approval of UGL and Armidale Council. For over 2 years, New England Railway have been trying to gain access to the line north of Armidale to undertake a degradation study and undertake a cost assessment of reinstating the railway. We have engaged Northern Regional Railway Company to assist with this, and since licence issue, this study has been well advanced. The reason for us undertaking this study is because our market research indicates that our greatest income source and tourism attractant for the Armidale region will be to run north. We understand that the preference for the rail trail is based on previous reports that reopening the entire line north of Armidale would amount to billions of dollars. Key fact is that those costs were based on terms of reference by a government that was trying to pass off its social responsibility to maintain public infrastructure. The cost based on entirely greenfield builds to a standard that would allow heavy haul trains such as coal trains to run at significant speeds. Our costs based on a 22-tonne axle load with upgrades to allow greater speeds. I also ask you to consider the worldwide investment in railways is at a record level as the social and environmental benefits of rail are realised. The Rural Health Inquiry also set access to public transport as a high priority related to health needs of residents in rural New South Wales. More frequent transport to the hospital hubs of Armidale, Tamworth and Newcastle would no doubt provide much fairer access for the residents north of Armidale. Our secretary often relieves in the general manager role for Armidale Hospital and Tableland sector, and has countless stories of people not being able to access healthcare appointments and specialist services as a result of inadequate public transport, including not capable of travelling on a bus. He also sees the impact poor public transport infrastructure has on attracting health professionals to this region. It also has become evident that the maintenance costs for rail trails in New South Wales continue to blow out, with local councils shouldering the burden of these costs. I read a business case that states rail trail between Armidale and Glen Innes would cost around $155,000 to maintain per year. To put that in perspective, that is the equivalent of one full-time and one part-time worker removing rubbish, maintaining grass, trees, controlling weeds, cleaning toilets on a regular basis, repairing drainage, including damage from significant rain events. Remembering the rail trail will pass a number of bridges and directly run through floodways, and maintaining fences. That cost comes without materials. This project most definitely is not shovel ready. We have been told previously that New England Railway is a burden on ratepayers of Armidale. Despite asking on numerous occasions, we are unsure if and how Armidale Regional Council subsidises us. We feel that the Mayor is deliberately pushing ahead with his need to build a monument to himself without first listening to the local community. We are also concerned...
Two points there. The time has actually finished, so 5 minutes was your time, and also if you can just keep your comments. Yeah,
I believe that was part of the instructions at the front of the Have Your Say section, that no defamatory remarks were made against individuals.
I don't think, with respect, I don't think they were defamatory. It was an opinion, but it's not defamatory. Yeah, I should know because I've had a few things said about me this week.
If we could call time there, and if there are any questions for Mr. Russell.
Yes, Mr. Russell, you mentioned there the impact of public transport on services and communities. Having lived in communities that, and Tamworth is a good example of being, it's the centre for health within the north of the state. A lot of people from the north of the state have to travel to Tamworth to get major operations done or see specialists or anything else like that. One of the issues I found living in places, I'll give you the example of living in... I beg your pardon, it's my turn to talk. When it's your turn to talk, you can use that. Show a bit of decorum, please. Where living in that community, one of the issues I found was that people could get to their appointments but couldn't get back because of lack of public transport. Do you think that if, for say, the train line would be able to go north, that this could potentially help those in the north of the state be able to come to that regional centre, for whether it's for health issues or other regional reasons why they have to go to Tamworth, and then be able to get back, whether it's subsidised as was mentioned to the previous speaker or anything else? Do you think a line like that would be beneficial to the community?
Thanks, Councillor Witters. If you could just use your button. Thanks, Mr. Russell.
Absolutely it could. One of our plans for New England Railway isn't just to be a heritage and tourism operator. Eventually, once all our rolling stock is restored, we want to run a timetabled service from Tamworth through to Tenterfield. We've actually had preliminary talks and discussions with the former member for the Northern Tablelands, but they were only preliminary discussions. But eventually, that is what we are looking at doing. Whether there's other providers that want to do the same thing, I don't know. I do know there are other tourist operators that have told us and advised us that they would use the line north of Armidale if it was operational, but at the moment it's not, so they can't use it. But our intention eventually is to run a timetabled service.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. Another question from Councillor Galletley.
Is this shovel ready? This that you're speaking about here with all of your things, and also, are you aware that some of this $5.4 million is going to be spent in Armidale on the railway station, as well as with fixing up infrastructure for where you fellas are using to house your stuff? Are you aware of those questions? And thank you for answering about whether it's shovel ready too in advance.
Thanks, Councillor Galletley.
So my understanding is that the funding is for the rail trail. So we're not aware that any upgrades were going to be made to our lease area because nobody has actually come forward and told us. We haven't even been consulted in regards to the rail trail at all. Nobody's ever come forward to us and say, hey, what are your thoughts on it? So to say that community's been consulted, everybody's been consulted, no, that's not true. And no, we're not aware of that fact. And upgrades to Armidale Station are funded through the state government through New South Wales Trains. Is it shovel ready? Have you refreshed yourself with the papers in relation to the rail trail recently?
No, your project I'm talking about, not...
Use your microphone.
Our project, that's what we're working towards. The rail trail certainly isn't either.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. Councillor Robinson.
I was quite excited by your idea of a timetable service. And I'm just wondering, because there's a really dearth of, say, a timetable service from Armidale to Uralla. I mean, if you've got a medical appointment there, it's still very difficult to get, say, from Armidale to Tamworth by train, and 90% of them all go by car for that reason. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts would be on that.
So the timetable that we would eventually be running would be based on the needs of this region, not Sydney-centric, which the current timetabled services are all based on times out of Sydney. Our services, eventually, once we do that, will be based on the needs of not only Armidale, but on the needs of Glen Innes, Tenterfield, Guyra, Deepwater and Tamworth. Not a Sydney-centric based timetable that's unsuitable for this region.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and that's one of the reasons why the rails are not used as much as possible, because they just don't serve the needs of this region. And I've also been trying to negotiate with Transport New South Wales to try and get some service or some more frequent service to Uralla.
Lovely, thank you very much, Mr. Russell. I'd now like to invite Mr. Hans Heatbrink to the podium, and if you could just press the button, Hans, to start. Mr. Heatbrink is speaking for item 12.1.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, councillors and council staff, I want to address item 12.1 and specifically paragraphs 1, 2 and 3 as they relate to the rail trail. Paragraph 1 asks Council to note the background supporting information. This information clearly indicates that opening the rail line north of Armidale would cost in the vicinity of $500 million, and that the likely return from both freight and passenger service would render opening that line both unfeasible and financially unviable. I urge councillors to read and note all the background documents on the rail trail issue. And I also urge councillors to recognise that should the government ever wish to reinstate rail services in the corridor, the rail trail will not prevent that. In fact, keeping the corridor in council hands will make it easier. Now to the crux of the matter. The previous Armidale Generic Council and its predecessor had a reputation for being non-progressive. These councils stymied development, halted progress, and allowed Armidale and surrounds to languish, while other councils like Tamworth, Coffs Harbour, Dubbo, and even Guyra encouraged development and growth. With the advent of Armidale Regional Council in 2016, it was hoped that we would have a council that changed that reputation and welcomed growth and development. Indeed, the slogan was to unleash the opportunities. This rail trail opportunity has been sitting before this council all that time. In Council's Economic Development Strategy of 2017, the rail trail was highlighted as one of the key pillars for economic development. Armidale Regional Council's Delivery Plan 2018 to 21 states, and I quote, "Opportunities will arise for new businesses to establish along the rail trail. Estimated 15,000 new day visits and 14,000 new overnight stays to the region annually. Over 37,000 locals will make use of the trail. Small communities along the route will benefit from increased visitation. All this will generate more than $5.8 million of additional visitor expenditure each year." Now, certainly, a rail trail becomes another sporting and recreational facility of council. And it does need to be budgeted for, does need to be maintained, and if necessary, depreciated in the same way as football fields, cricket grounds, and tennis courts. The big difference is that while other sporting facilities, by and large, do not bring in dollars to the region, a rail trail brings to the region visitors, and visitor economy generates additional revenue and employment to boost the local economy. Reports and studies from rail trails in other jurisdictions all show positive outcomes from rail trails. Other councils in Australia have been positive and have unleashed the economic opportunities that rail trails deliver. Why has Armidale Regional Council not done the same? I believe with some councillors we have inherited the same anti-progress attitudes that pervaded the previous Armidale Generic Council. We also have councillors who, by their own admission, are supporters of the reintroduction of rail services. For these reasons, we get objections that relate to biosecurity, maintenance, lack of information, costs, and so forth. There have been calls for more studies and more reports and more consultation. There have been numerous amendments to motions. There have been suggestions of heritage trains. There are suggestions for an enterprise at Ben Lomond that will require rail transport. All of these objections are spurious, and they can all be answered within the existing documentation or with a little research. They are all designed to delay or halt progress on the rail trail. There is no reason to delay this project any further. I thank Councillor Robinson for putting this motion, and I urge councillors to support paragraphs 1, 2 and 3 of item 12.1 in full, and thereby help unleash the opportunities to this council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hartley. Just before you leave, Hans, are there any questions for Hans?
Yes.
Councillor Witters.
Young Mr. Hands, thank you for mentioning the 2017 report that about the rail trail. I didn't get a chance to write it all down, what was said, but in there was talking about it would bring businesses and tourism dollars and all that sort of thing. And it comes back again to my point. We're getting lost here. And I really want to thank the speakers for speaking about what was the whole 10 years of what this rail trail has been about. It's about the full line. We're getting lost again, back to where we were 2 weeks ago. And I do have a question for you on this, on what we're talking about. We're talking about this section, this stage 1, 9.8 kilometres of it. Out of that 2017 report, where do you see the potential for what's been said in that to be done for this section? Like, I love the fact, I love the passion, and I love the fact that everyone's spoken about what a full rail trail can bring. But as you mentioned, and maybe falsely, hands about other sporting events not bringing in tourism dollars, and those on the Sports Council, and we get a regular Sports Council report on how much tourism people have come in on different sports and different events as it is. So why? Tell me, what I'm looking for in my question is, how does this 9.8 kilometre track section relate to the 2017 report, and why is it the shining light on top of the hill? Because from your comments today, that's where the thinking is. And so for me, I want to know, I want to be persuaded on how it relates to that, and why 9 kilometres of a bike track sits high above everything else and makes, apparently, us as a not do council into a progressive do council.
Thank you for your simple question, Councillor. You have to start somewhere. The original proposal from Guyra Shire Council for a rail trail was from Black Mountain to Ben Lomond. That was entirely within the Guyra Shire. To now, because we have Armidale Regional Council, to plonk a section of rail trail in the middle of an LGA is not feasible. It is far better to start somewhere, and that's what I believe this new proposal is, to start at Armidale. And from there, we can progress.
So would you not consider, and it's a good point on a start, I agree with you, because there's no accessibility to a track in the middle of nowhere is a good concern. My understanding was that the start from Black Mountain to Ben Lomond was to link up with the Glen Innes section to continue on from there. Now, basically, if that's the case and this proposal goes ahead, you've got that big gap in between making it because the whole idea, and this is, I do have a question, the whole idea of the rail trail is to make it a regional tourism thing. So if you've got that big gap section there, would it not make more sense to link the start to a neighbouring thing instead of having this track? So starting from where as a region, starting and joining up from there. So the start at Ben Lomond is actually a start, and linking as a regional, if you're thinking as a regional tourist attraction.
My preference would be to do the whole damn lot. Not to do it in bits and pieces. Unfortunately, funding only allows for bits and pieces. We don't get more funding until we can show the first bit is successful. I believe we're doing the right thing with this, starting at Armidale. We can work towards Turmeric. Then from there on, if that is successful, we can continue. I believe the whole trail from Armidale, hopefully right through to the border, but at least through to Tenterfield or the other side of Glen Innes, will be an absolute bonus and a boon to tourism for this whole region.
Thank you.
This question.
We're running out of time.
Yeah, it's a very quick question, and this probably I should ask this for all of the. So what I'm getting from all the speakers from today and from the last meeting is that you're all for bike tourism. Yeah, bring cyclists, bringing tourism dollars too. So it's more about not about a trail or anything else. It's about bike tourism is what I'm getting. Is rail trail the only type of bike tourism that there is?
It's not only for tourists, it's for local people as well. You look at the number of people riding bicycles in Armidale and Guyra. If there was a rail trail, they would be on it. And the health benefits have been shown over and over again. I see no reason for not going ahead with this project. And I'd liken it to the tortoise. Tortoise only gets ahead by sticking its neck out. And sometimes we need to do that. With projects like this, we need to stick our neck out and say, let's give it a go. Let's not block it anymore. Let's not have more rescission motions. Let's not have more amendments to motions. Let's get this underway, approve this. And I do thank Dorothy Robinson for putting this before us. And those 3 points I mentioned, 12.1, 1, 2 and 3, need to go through. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Hyphen. I now call upon our final speaker, Ms Kay Andrews, to speak for item 12.1. Thank you. If you just press the button.
Well, thank you everybody for letting me have the chance to speak, and I hopefully won't be too long. Just to introduce myself, I'm a fourth generation family in the community. I work in the travel and tourism industry and I've been in it for 40 years. I know I don't look that old. And I've been chair of Tour de Rocks for 7 years, which is a charity bike ride that has been running for 11 years. At the last ordinary council meeting on the 24th of April, although the majority of the community were disappointed with the outcome of the vote, a group of concerned residents got together and said, let's address what the councillors are worried about, and understandably. So we've stuck our neck out. Myself and my co-chairs of Tour de Rocks got together and said, what can we do? How can we help? That's Tour de Rocks' motto. So we went out to the local community and then within 72 hours had 23 out of 24 businesses and concerned residents put up their hand financially and pledge over the next 10 years to help maintain the rail trail. We got $23,000 straight away in 72 hours, and that's ready to go for the 9.8 kilometres of trail, which is everyone's calling it the mini rail trail now, apparently. We also had another group get together, and within 5 days they had 6,000 signatures on a petition supporting the trail. So again, you know, well done to them. We also had a very well-known not-for-profit organisation in Armidale ask them for their support. Backtrack, as you all know, are an amazing organisation, and they have fully supported the ongoing maintenance as well. And I'd like you to read the letter that Marcus Watson, the CEO, has sent out to us. I've also got a copy here of those who would like to read it as well. To whom it may concern, to Mr David Boundy and Scott Sullivan, I'm writing to express my support for the Armidale Rail Trail maintenance proposal, particularly in its collaboration with Backtrack YouthWorks. As a dedicated advocate for youth empowerment and community development, I'm excited about the positive impact this partnership will have on our region. Backtrack YouthWorks provides young individuals with valuable opportunities to develop skills, gain experience and make meaningful contributions to the community. By aligning the Armidale Rail Trail project, Backtrack is poised to extend its reach and impact even further. Backtrack is fully qualified to fulfil the project with experienced staff and supervisors, machinery and equipment and insurances. Through this partnership, young people engaged with Backtrack will have the chance to work alongside community, gaining hands-on experience with the tasks associated with trail maintenance. The Armidale Rail Trail provides an ideal environment for undertaking certificates in machinery operation, chemical spraying and handling and numerous other things. I am confident that this collaboration will not only benefit the Armidale community by the ongoing maintenance, but also provide invaluable opportunities for the personal and professional growth of the youth involved. The skills and experiences gained through their involvement with the Rail Trail project will undoubtedly increase their employability, aiding with the skills shortage in the region. In addition to this, I wish to announce that Backtrack YouthWorks will be offering $20,000 worth of in-kind support in labour to support the upkeep of the trail. This significant contribution underscores Backtrack's dedication to the success of the ongoing maintenance of the Armidale Rail Trail. Should you require any further information or assistance, please do not hesitate to contact me. And that was written by Marcus Watson, the CEO of Backtrack. So, in ending, I urge you to look at the economic benefits that this trail will bring to our community and in the Armidale region. I've seen it firsthand, as when I rode the rail trail in New Zealand as well. How lucky are we, all these people in this room, riding the Otago Rail Trail? And also, we must be aware of the reputational damage that this could have on our wonderful community if we hand back that grant that was given to us. So thank you, everybody, for letting me have the chance to speak. And, yeah.
Thank you very much, Ms. Edwards. Do we have any questions of Kay? No questions. Thank you very much. So thank you to all of our speakers today, and also thank you for the gallery for joining us. We are going to have a 5-minute break and then resume at 4:20. So we'll have a 7-minute break, and we'll come back. You're more than welcome to stay in the gallery, but equally, if you'd like to leave, you can do so now. Thank you.